Welcome to Fintech Confidential, bringing you the people, tech, and companies that change how you pay and get paid.
I felt like I literally was like Willy Wonka. I got a chance to go see how the chocolate was made, how things are distributed, who's doing what. It doesn't matter if you're a Fortune 100 company or a startup of 2 people and a PowerPoint presentation. There's highs, there's lows, but if you're passionate about it, you can go through any wall. If you're walking around with your rotary telephone, everyone would laugh at you. So we got to take that same approach and look at it through banking. When people are scared, new products, innovative things can't happen. We've had some folks that couldn't get access to the traditional financial system have gotten us, and we watched their businesses double. And that's dope. Like when I see that, I'm like, this is it. This is the dream. Trust your gut. If it comes from your passion and people feel it and they believe it, they'll support you.
Hey, Ted Huff here. Ever thought about how you could streamline your application and underwriting process? Well, let me introduce you to Under. Why keep using the outdated methods of PDFs when you can digitize them effortlessly? All you gotta do is upload the PDF, send it out for digital signature, and voila, you're set for the digital age. Are you curious on how to make that happen? Head over to under.io/FTC and get started for free. It's really that simple. Welcome to Fintech Confidential's Leaders One-on-One series. I'm your host, Ted Huff, and we are here to sit down with fintech leaders to uncover their stories behind their passion, expertise, and leadership in fintech. Today's guest is none other than Ariel Blum, the CEO and founder of Receive. Now, Ariel comes from a really diverse background, including roles at American Express, Green Dot, and even a fascinating journey from the music industry into fintech. Now, Ariel has been innovating by providing small businesses with fee-free access to their earnings, empowering them to thrive. And today, we'll explore Ariel's fintech journey, the challenges and opportunities ahead, and his vision for the future of fintech. Ariel, thank you for joining, man. This has been really cool. We got to sit down a little bit and do a little bit of a call ahead of time. I was sitting at Finovate. You were over in Israel. So it's so awesome to have you on finally.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It was awesome catching up with you and thrilled that I get to be on and chat with you and something that obviously I'm passionate about. So let's do this.
Your first passion was in fintech. And I'm really curious to understand, like, how did you evolve from, before we even do that, what is your current favorite new EDM song and who's the artist?
Wow. So being over here in Israel, I've actually gotten into a little bit more of the psytrance stuff, which is cool. Obviously, when it comes to all the folks, like obviously the Chainsmokers, got a chance to know them. They're just amazing. I don't know. It's hard for me to pick. Obviously, like the legend of the game, Tiesto, and I love a little bit less known folks like Porter Robinson, Pierce Fulton. These are people that just speak to me. And probably my favorite artist of all time is one I've gotten a chance to meet, and he's a legend. It's Cascade. Yeah. Just, it's awesome. I love music. Everything I do is music. I ride on the bike. I drop my daughter at school. We're blasting music, even the techno version of Wheels on the bus. So we got music around the house all the time.
Oh, man. That's interesting. I don't think you and I have talked about this, but I spent my early 20s DJing at nightclubs as well, house, trance, all that fun stuff. And it's so interesting is there are some parallels that we can draw between fintech and the DJ space, because you're always trying to figure out how do you get that thing to just feel right and get that vibe going with everybody. I will say that right now, like, I've been in this really strange spot where like I've been bouncing between all these different genres of music because I like all music and I've been bouncing between all of them. But if I have to come back to the EDM side of the house and I'm doing that general big bubble, right? It's really the Upside Down by Medusa and Poppy Baxcomb. Like that just got this like ethereal feel. I would play it if I didn't get a DRM takedown. But it's got this really just nice, but then it's got that nice consistent feel to it. So I'll put a link in the show notes if y'all want to go listen to it, and we'll do that. But man, I had to start out there because that is my first love as well, is the music and everything. And just, I had to start it before we dove in, but I really want to understand, like, how did you fall into fintech after that being your first love?
But no, it's funny how it all comes to be. I'll never forget my first intro to the kind of finance world. It was early on. My dad told me I had to open up a credit card and you had to start building credit. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is foreign language. I'm trying to play hockey, learn music. That's what I want to do. And then he gave me the introduction of checks. And he's like, you got to balance your checkbook. And I looked at him and I was like, I don't understand. Should I keep my rocks stacked a certain way? Should I this is old school. And what's funny actually is on a recent trip, when he came out to see me and my wife and the kids, he brought my original sketches of, it wasn't called Venmo, but it was Pay Now or Pay Me Now. And it was like, that's early on. I was always trying to think about how can we use tech to meet the needs of today? Now, obviously it was a horrific sketch. It was like, there's no Figma back then. This is pen and paper stuff, but it's cool because it was always on my mind. And my parents were small business owners. So I saw how they were doing everything manually. And I kept saying, there's got to be a better way. Now, what's amazing is the way tech has evolved, APIs, et cetera, where we are today. And back in the day, it wasn't there. But yeah, that was my early onset. And then going through college, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but obviously passion with music. So I was into Kaza and how we're doing all this stuff and just constantly learning about torrent stuff like that, just trying to constantly enhance my knowledge. And I was just fascinated by this stuff. And really what was interesting was I took that to going to build synths, trying to get gigs and DJing around New York. And what was funny was just the money kept coming in slower than people needed me to pay them. And just that little kind of come to a head where people need to get paid, but my money hasn't come in yet, made me say, what's going on here? How does this work? How do I balance books? What is all this stuff? So I'd say really it was organic in the sense that I was DJing, I was having a time of my life. And I was saying, where's the money? How do I pay for this? Okay, I need to go buy a speaker for this wedding. It's $1,700. I don't have $1,700. What do I do to afford this? I got $1,100 in my bank account, but I got $1,000 coming from the gig last night. What do I do? So things like that, I would say just help opening my mind. And also I wasn't a very good DJ. I obviously loved it, but the future was not me behind the ones and twos, but I had a couple of DJs working for me and I just fell in love with the business side and looking into alternative solutions. And my mind got hooked on fintech and PayPal, Venmo, before it was acquired, Braintree, like these things. I was like, whoa, how does this work? Or even things that had fallen by the wayside and then got really cool. For example, Tap and Pay. That had launched in the States and nothing came of it. And then you see Apple Pay come and it's conceptually the same thing and just blow up. Yeah. So I used to love these things. And yeah, I guess that's what kind of paved the way forward.
I touched on it a little bit, but help us understand and share with us more about your time at Amex, more about your time at Green Dot, and how those things have shaped the way that you approach your business today.
Yeah, those were amazing times. I'll tell you, I remember my first day of Amex, like crystal clear, because it was the holy grail, right? This was like the coolest thing since sliced bread for me. Like I got to go walk into this Fortune 100 company and we were on such a cool and dope team, the like digital partnerships and pushing innovation. And honestly, they took a gamble on me. And I was a young kid who loved fintech or whatever it was at the time, financial technology. Didn't even have a cool moniker yet. And they were willing to teach me what they knew. And I remember I met the product guy first and he sat with me and he was like, this is what we're going to do. And we brainstormed and he was patient with me. And I had a lot of hustle. I sold paint to help make money when I was a kid. I didn't mind calling up merchants, hearing what was going on, banging down doors. I loved it. And yeah, it was a dream come true. And Amex is the closed loop, the full loop, whichever term you want to use. They got the issuer, the network, and the acquirer. So I felt like I literally was like Willy Wonka. I got a chance to go see how the chocolate was made, how things are distributed, who's doing what. And I was blessed. I had a really unique position with incredible people that gave me the authority to go ask people, hey, what's going on here? Why do we do things this way? I was involved with the venture arm, not just hearing what they were working on or looking at. And yeah, it was a dream come true. And it was funny because you're looking around, you're like, wow, all these people are so smart. Do I belong here? Did they make a mistake? And you have that every time I swipe my pass, I was like, oh, it worked. Yes. And then at some point I was like, okay, you belong here and it's going to be great. They were just awesome folks. And I'll never forget. Then I got promoted and I focused. I should start with this. My original job was what's called the Amex Express checkout button, which to me, I was like obsessed with because at the very bare minimum, it was marketing, right? You're going to check out on an e-commerce page, whatever it might be. You see a button that says click, pay, be on your way. And using those same credentials that you would use to log into your app or the website, I kept saying, whoa, this is limitless. Like we can do a bunch with this. Forget just payment. We can do provisioning. We can do all this stuff. You can forget sign up with your Google, sign up with your bank. There was so much I had in mind. And really our team was unique in that we could do a lot of it. Obviously you start to see what a 60, 70,000 person organization is, but I had some incredible mentors. I got to meet Ken, with the CEO at the time, Vice Chairman Doug Buckminster, and just to hear how these folks thought about stuff was amazing. So that was an experience I held really near and dear to my heart. And I got lucky. I got the support of some senior leadership and got promoted to be the director of Plenty, or the artist formerly known as Plenty since they shut it down. But Loyalty Coalition, what an incredible opportunity to dive into that. And from there, got a chance to go over to the kind of co-brand Pay It Planet side. So it was incredible. And I didn't want to leave. It was challenging. It was fun. And I got a call from an old colleague who had gone over to Green Dot and kind of mentioned something that I thought was really interesting, which was, hey, we're going to create financial products engulfed within another experience. Meaning, imagine there's a brand, and then within it, you're going to have financial services. And a light bulb went off. And I was like, everything, it's like AWS for financial services. That's crazy. And you guys own the bank? What? So that was a really kind of moment where I was like, I didn't want to leave, but I felt that this was an incredible opportunity. And I love Amex, and it was the right move for me to go and just see the banking as a service world as it was evolving really early on, with an incredible team, a real visionary behind Steve Street, who was the CEO at the time. Just really cool working with him, the CRO, Brett Narlinger, my boss, Seth. Like, it was just an incredible experience. The ability to work in really innovative places that take financial services to the next level was what I just absolutely became passionate about.
Oh man, you talk about all these different things and all the people you got to interact with and all the really cool projects. It's funny, I was sitting on the other side of a handful of those projects when we were looking at how do we support these types of projects, especially like the buy now buttons. During that time, all the card brands were doing it, right? So Visa did it, MasterCard did it, Amex did it. Everybody tried to create a way to speed up the process to make a purchase. But I'm really curious, like in those areas, what would be like the top 3 things that you really took away from those experiences that have really propelled you forward at Receive?
I think the first thing was how big fintech is and like how much you can impact people's lives, right? There's a lot of this, are you going to have a gazillion users, etc. I don't think that's the metric to go by. If I can change one person's day and enhance that person's business or change their life, that's awesome. And that's worth pursuing 100%. And I heard that, especially at Amex and Green Dot, you could hear the call centers. You could see how we change people's lives. And you could also, and then number 2, I would say is passion. I'll tell you, I remember Ken speaking to the audience about traveler checks and just seeing how passionate people were. If you're passionate about the problem you're trying to solve, you can do it for hours on end. And there is going to be highs and there are going to be lows. It doesn't matter if you're a Fortune 100 company or a startup of 2 people and a PowerPoint presentation. There's highs, there's lows. But if you're passionate about it, you can go through any wall because it's not novel to say no. Everybody is programmed to say no. That is the first reaction. But to be able to say, I'm going to do it anyways, and I'm going to blow through this wall or this challenge, that's amazing. And for us, especially at a company that started as a freight forwarder by Wells and Fargo, right? And now it's a payments company inventing credit cards, right? Like stuff like that. To be able to say, hey, we're going to go digital and this is what we're going to do, and it's going to be totally different. Mm-hmm. That's a big thing. And if you're just going to say, hey, this is an idea, it's going to get shot down. But the passion from the team really rubbed off on me, and it's something that I carry with me till this day. And then number 3, it's the customer. If you love that person at the end, there's nothing to beat it, right? You want to hear from them. You want to be a part of their lives. When they have a wonderful occasion, you're there. We had our sales guy now at Receive. I remember somebody went in for a heart surgery and they had flowers at their house. And I don't even think they ended up signing up for anything, but he was like, oh, I'm sorry that I wasted. I said, wasted? That's the kind of people we are. And that's what I want to be passionate about. So tying those 3 together, dream, passion, and really the customer, I think those 3 tie together to make a power, just team and product.
The most common cause of bad customer experience isn't that high tech. It's embarrassingly simple. Yep, it's answering questions. In e-commerce, it's really easy to get bogged down with common questions, whether that's where's my package, how do I return or exchange this item, or just to cancel a subscription. It's SolvePath is an AI-driven customer support system that enhances the customer experience with visual formats and self-serve technology to empower your customers to handle their own support requests. Get the best customer support system for your business. Get SolvePath. Get started by visiting getsolvepath.com.
Tell me about Receive and what the mission is, why it matters to the broader fintech ecosystem.
Sure. In short, our vision is to make liquidity on demand. Our motto is access anytime, anywhere. We want small businesses that if they want access to their sales, they don't have to wait for that. They don't have to abide by the credit scores and the traditional paradigms that have been instilled on us. We want to bring a new, revolutionary, unique approach to giving small businesses access to spending power. We don't call it credit. We don't call it anything like that. We're saying spending power. If you earn the dollar, that dollar is yours. How can we turn that liquid? And that's our vision. That's our mission.
So how are you doing that? You talk about making these sales that you took that maybe you don't have the funds in hand today. How is Receive providing the essential financial tools for these businesses? And I've got to imagine, based upon your background and all the fun things you've played in, there's some innovative ways that you've implemented this.
Yeah, there definitely is. Prior experiences have helped me see what to do, what not to do, what really hurts to do, which are super important things to know. I'm grateful for those experiences. The first thing is to assemble a badass team, right? I think that you have to bring the right folks together, forward-thinking folks that want to solve the same problem. And the way we do it is we've created some underlying tech that really enables us to see what you've sold, see your bank account, be able to put that together to meet your demand needs. Meaning, see, your business could be looking for additional ad spend to buy something. Like we had a customer that wanted to go buy a carburetor, but didn't have the money yet because of the point of sale system. That would have messed up his entire business and delayed that purchase. We gave them the liquidity to go buy that carburetor, which I'm not a car guy. I have no idea what that is, but it was definitely a big purchase. And be able to put that back in the customer's car, get them out quicker, and then get paid, and we got paid back. It's a pretty simple approach, but it requires thinking outside the box, right? We're in a world of credit scores and, in my opinion, predatory lending, right? These crazy APRs that honestly, I don't know who can dig their way out of it. And that's a scary reality. And our thinking was, can we do something different? And can we do it for free? That's really how we came up with Receive.
So the key word that I keep hearing that just blows my mind is it for free. Help me understand how you're, maybe not how you're, it is. Yeah. How you're doing it for free, because we see all these different things that businesses, me as a business owner, as well as I've been in this space for nearly a quarter century, and I've seen all the fees that go along with these types of products and services. How in the heck are you doing this for free?
Again, being at Amex, I saw a model that worked incredibly called Interchange. And it was an amazing model. Then I went to Green Dot and I saw the banking as service world. I said, that seems to be working really well too. And then obviously joining Melio, which was a wonderful ride, right? Didn't join too early, but joined early enough that everybody knew each other's names and then just watched the explosion. But talking to the small businesses and hearing them say, hey, I'm waiting for my money. Can you make it liquid now? And if you could do it for free, that'd be dope. And I remember going around New York, hearing that feedback and going, I can do that with Interchange. So what we do is we enable that liquidity via a virtual card. You can go out there and swipe that virtual card, and we're earning revenue the same way Chase, Amex, Citi, et cetera, are doing it. But our focus is really giving you higher liquidity and short-term duration. So really no APRs, no interest. We're leveraging something that's established, common, and true to really help you propel your business forward. That's the secret sauce there.
It's a known revenue source, right? And it's predictable. There are specific things you got to do around it. I want to talk about the team. You talked about you got to build yourself a badass team. Once you've built that team, how do you lead that team to balance the technology needs and all the fun stuff goes on with that, but also maintain all the customer centricity in creating the solutions that support the guy that needs to go buy the carburetor and the e-commerce guy that needs to pay for somebody to manufacture their goods? How do you help lead a team that needs to balance between these two similar but very different worlds?
It's such a good question. First thing I'll say is I don't lead them. They lead me, right? They bring the passion. They bring the insights. They bring love. And one of the things that I care so much about is how everybody respects each other, how we all work together. Super duper important for me. And what I will say is, yes, these are very different industries. But one of the things that I felt really good about just my experience, and by the way, even selling paint door to door, right? How do you go from a big house to a small house to a medium house? How are you pitching them the same? And the interesting thing was, number one, what I learned through DJing and selling paint, reading the room, right? Understand who you're talking to. But number two, there's core problems that everybody faces, right? At its core, number one and number two, everybody has things to pay for and things to get paid for. And if you can understand those two in totality, there's different times, there's different amounts, absolutely. But if you understand that and the core pain that comes with waiting for money, but having exposure that you have to go pay XYZ now, you understand that pain, you can plug into almost any industry. So there's definitely nuances in the e-commerce side versus the auto body shop versus other folks. Totally get it. But I think if you can identify the common problems, the common pains, you can also say, hey, teach me about your business. And people love to tell you about their business. As long as you're coming from a place of empathy and a place that you want to help, I think it's been awesome. And I think the team has really come to embody that. It's cool.
It's really cool to hear that the team comes with that sense of curiosity towards things versus a perspective of this is how it has to be done. It's like, how can we versus how should we? And that is a really interesting perspective from that. But it also leads into how important it is to simplify all of these tools for the small businesses, because like you mentioned, they're similar, but they're different. And the nomenclature and the terminology that they use across these is so different.
So different.
How are you at Receive simplifying these tools for them? So like we mentioned, the body shop guy and the e-commerce store both understand what's going on.
So funny. When I got to Amex, they had Acropedia. It was like all the acronyms.
Yes.
And I remember looking at it, I was like, oh boy, I was not a good student. This is not going to go well. And I remember thinking that straight up. And so the first thing we do is we talk to folks the way we want to be talked to, right? Full words, full sentences. We're coming to people from an eye level. I remember that I definitely had experiences, and I won't say which firm in the past, where customers would say, I feel like you're talking down to me. For example, and I do this, but just so the audience knows, you have a credit utilization rate. So you have X amount that they give you in a credit line on a credit card. If you go above a certain amount, it becomes a credit utilization risk. The bank views it as a liability and they'll shut you down. What does all of that mean? That means the X amount that you were given, you don't actually get a chance to use all of that, which is mind-boggling, right? When you think about it. So for us, we talk to folks, we say, if you earn the dollar, you get X, right? We keep things very clear and we make sure that we identify the words that make sense, the nomenclatures that are intuitive and people get and that fit their businesses. We try to avoid acronyms, high level things that just would make people feel alienated. Yeah. We're just people too, right? And that's what we're really focused on. Our vision and the way we view it is doing good by doing well, right? They're not mutually exclusive. We can do both.
From building financial tools to empowering businesses, let's take this a little bit further and talk about the greater good that fintech can really achieve. I'd love to understand how you see fintech improving financial well-being, access to services, not only for businesses, but the individuals that are the heart and soul of these small businesses.
Totally. So like you mentioned, what is it? 91% of people are employed or own a small business in the US, right? So, and every single presidential candidate says, we're all about small business, the backbone of the US economy. And I've heard your take before. But the government, yeah, not really, right? Like we're going to drag our feet and we're going to increase taxes and we're going to make things a little bit harder. Now, I understand that they come from their perspective, but what I think fintech can do, and especially with the evolution of APIs and the ability to build for lower costs, right? Back in the day, to go get a server, to do all these things, that limited your ability to really go out there. Now we have a democratization of access and tech. So we see people saying, hey, I got an idea. I can go do that. Now, the question, of course, is then how does regulation play into this and everything? So that's an important piece that, we can go off on that tangent as well. But I think fintech has the way to democratize access, to give folks coming in the same opportunity that exists with the folks that have been there forever. The folks that have a ton of money, the same open-eyed, we'll call it access that the folks with less money, right? When we level the playing field, we take away a lot of the advantages and we give folks the opportunity to invest in themselves. And that's what I think the future is. Fintech can level the playing field and give access where it hasn't before. And I don't just mean in the US, right? I think about the world in general because I'm nerdy and obviously living over here in Israel, right? But in Egypt, there's 80, 90 million people. There's 120% have smartphones, but only 10% of the population is big. It doesn't make sense. You can't sleep with money under the pillow. That's dangerous. It's risky. It's costly, all these things. So I think about it as a greater good for people. I think that we're just scratching that surface.
Oh my God. It's funny. This morning, I was flipping through my news and just reading a bunch of stuff, as I do every morning. I take time in the morning just to catch up and learn new things. And this morning, I came across something that I thought was interesting because you say you can't put the money in the mattress, but you'd be amazed at the number of people that have a distrust for financial institutions. And it didn't used to be that in South America. You would see that in the African and Middle Eastern areas of the world. The thing that caught me off guard this morning when I was reading it is there's a gentleman here in the US that literally, I don't know how they got the story, first off. He's talking about how he doesn't trust the banks. So he has a safe in his home that has over $650,000 in cash in it. And you think about these things, and the whole piece behind it is it started in 2008 during the financial crisis then, when he lost the confidence that the system was going to protect him. And I don't think the last year has really helped a whole lot with that, with the collapse of a handful of banks. We probably put extra money into that safe during that time period. But this gets me into the next piece of it. He's a contrarian on the importance of financial institutions. What are a couple of your contrarian or controversial opinions about fintech that you have, and why?
Wow, this is a great question. First thing I'll start with, like, the folks that can shake the tree and what I love. And like you said, a lot of people have that distrust for, I would say, traditional financial institutions. And then you see folks like the Chime folks, like Chris Bray, former Green Dotter, just amazing to come out. And years ago it was, oh, okay, that's a novel idea. Now what is it? It's a top 10 bank in the US. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Doing the same thing, but doing it different. And I know that kind of sounds a little silly when people hear it, right? Oh, you're doing the same thing as other banks, but different. But that different is the UX. That different is to speak to people in the language that they understand, to be mobile first, right? Things that people really need. I think that enhances trust. By the way, I think that trust speaks across the board to what we need to instill in folks. Like this particular individual with 650 grand at home. He's obviously a very successful business person, right? That's a good chunk of change to be having sitting there. Now, me personally, that's not earning any interest. That's not in the markets. That makes me anxious, right? Because there's no return on my money. But I hear his point. It's safe. And when you look around, you see a lot of things going in directions that you go, wait, am I going to get my money back? Now, with that comes education, right? You can tell them FDIC insurance. And if you spread it across 4 different accounts, you're guaranteed the government's got your back, right? So I think there's an element of education and UX that we can do to really help enhance that. But some of my contrarian views, which is funny, for years I've been going on about them, is like, I'll tell you the first was zero interest environment is not going to be good for anybody, right? Free money is not going to end well in the long scheme of things. So we saw people build businesses off free money, and I think that they've come under a lot of pressure today. Now, what's interesting is I think the pressure is not necessarily bad pressure. It forces people to think and be more innovative and creative, and that's awesome. I also think that my contrarian view is that I think regulation has to keep up. I think that generally the consensus is, like we said earlier on, is no, right? Like I'll never forget the Jamie Dimon crypto. No. Okay. Now we're into it. and again, it's the sign of somebody who's really thinking and thoughtful and a serious person is the ability to change their mind. It's not a bad thing. It's not a knock on somebody, but it's instead of saying no, how do we say yes? Instead of saying, is this that or that? And try to bucket it as a loan and try to bucket it as XYZ. How do we think about what's good in 10, 12 years from now? That's my contrarian approach. I don't know if it's that contrarian, but I think that generally we have a tendency to say no, and we rely on kind of the stalwarts of financial innovation. But if you're walking around with your rotary telephone, everyone would laugh at you. So we got to take that same approach and look at it through banking, right? Nobody now is walking around with the little dial, right? They're called the rotary telephones. I think that's if I got that right. And then, so if you had that, people would laugh. If you had a cellular phone without internet access, and we have a tendency to look at the old and say, oh, that was silly. But then the new also, right? Oh, I don't trust Apple Pay was the original push there. And I had to explain to people, what a D-pan is, right? This is the best thing you can have out there, right?
Get any really more secure than that.
Yeah. So, and I remember I had to explain it to somebody. I won't say who, it was a family member. And I used like Chuck E. Cheese as the example. You give the $1 to Chuck E. Cheese and then they give you a token and you can go anywhere with that token, but you can't use it anywhere else except for that location. He's like, oh, okay, I get it. I was like, yes, I nailed it. And then I took my nephew to Dave & Buster's to celebrate. I'm so proud of myself. But my point is, I think we have to stop saying no to the old. That's fine. But also no to the brand new, right? And figuring out how we can inculcate the understanding. How can we put it applicable for our lives? Like, I think there's a lot of buzz right now around AI and it's going to put everyone out of a job and this and that. But I think the same way switchboard operators, when you used to call internationally, that was a job. Now it doesn't exist anymore. But those folks, through education and enhancing the new technology, we're able to move on to something new. There's always going to be problems. It doesn't mean that tech comes along and there's no more problems. I think we've learned that for a matter of fact. But yeah, that's my take.
Support provided by Skyflow. What if you could build fast but not break privacy? What if you could ensure data privacy, governance, and compliance with just a few API calls? What if you could worry less about PCI requirements while actually improving privacy and security? How much more time would your team have to truly innovate? How much faster could you build and ship new features? How much more powerful could your app be? Skyflow is a zero-trust data privacy vault delivered as an API. Skyflow's radically simple design lets you collect, secure, and tokenize personal information like card data and payment details. And with built-in features like encrypted data analysis and sharing, anonymization, and advanced governance, your days of choosing between data security and data usability are over. Whether you're just concerned with PCI compliance or need to go further to include CCPA, GDPR, SOC 2, and beyond, Skyflow has you covered. What if you could build fast but not break privacy? With Skyflow, you can. Visit skyflowsecure.com today to learn how.
So you'd mentioned that regulation needs to keep up with fintech. And one of the things that I'd love to get your perspective and your thoughts on is and I'm trying to think of how to say this in a nice way, the regulatory body's use of enforcement to bypass the need to create regulation, but more enforce a personal agenda or personal opinion. I feel like the pendulum has swung so heavy to the side of, I'm just going to fine the crap out of you until you quit doing what I think you shouldn't be doing, versus let me understand why you're doing this and how we can help you and protect the industry with that. Like, I feel like the pendulum is like swinging from like side to the other. And for some reason it's gotten stuck over here on, let me just sue you and consent order you and everything to death to publicly shame you instead of telling you how you can fix this problem. That's my personal side. I could be completely wrong, but that's what it feels like when I work with my clients who are fintechs that are trying to deliver on fantastic products like what you're doing over at Receive. That's their biggest scared point.
And I think it's a really valid point to be scared of, right? Nobody wants to be publicly shamed. Nobody wants to do anything wrong. We're in this business to do right. I really believe that when you talk to fintech folks, Money 2020, I'm sure at Finovate, people are thinking outside the box to do the right thing. Now, I definitely believe that there's a role for regulation. I think that's totally agreed upon, but there's a difference between enforcement and understanding. And I think that understanding has to be the precedent before enforcement. And there's ways to do this. Like I always said this, I don't know if you remember back in school, you used to have the idea box, right? Drop something in. So if you're working on something and right, you have great VCs, you're backed and we're blessed. We have incredible VCs, incredible customers. I feel like I won the lottery, right? Like, can you go drop the note in the FCC or the OTC, whatever it might be, drop a box and say, hey, we're working on this. We're getting ahead of this. Work with us, not against us. And I think that's where we have to be more proactive. And I think that the world can be really a much better place if we all work together instead of, like you said, I'm going to find the crap out of somebody for this and public shaming. And by the way, even there's gradations, right? Like even the consent orders that go out, some of them are for, oh, you were missing potentially something in the UDEP side versus something on, oh, customer money was missing, right? There's so many different
customer money missing?
Yeah.
That never happens.
But these things do happen. And there's such a big difference between the two ends, right? Hey, we had some marketing copy that might have been a foul or we lost something, but that wasn't intentional. Tell us how we can get better. Fines aren't going to do what I think that they're intended to do, right? Generally, they're intended as punishment. And I think all it does is cripple innovation, right? There should be a way of, hey, fix this in the next 6 months, right? There's ways to be very proactive and accretive instead of destructive, in my opinion.
It's interesting you mentioned, like, a lot of people don't realize that a consent order that goes out may be something that has been going on for 1, 2, maybe 3 years. The piece that I guess I was leaning into a little bit is just because you've been telling me it's a problem for 3 years and you haven't given me a guidance on whether we should have some sort of like hot cold game going on here. Am I getting hotter? Am I getting colder? Help me understand. But I understand that from the regulatory perspective, they don't want to provide any sort of coaching onto how they would make their choices. But at the same time, I think there needs to be the regulatory piece of the house that is clear enough that allows you to understand when you've crossed a boundary.
Totally.
And I just did an episode talking about the click to cancel model that's going on with the FTC that is about to be passed, if it hasn't passed already by the time we release this episode. But there is no cure period with it. If you miss it, you do it wrong, intentionally or unintentionally, it doesn't matter. It's between $5,000 and $10,000 per instance. And there's no cure period. There's no, oops, we accidentally did that. And we can prove to you that we accidentally did that. It's the FTC, the way it's written today is, sorry, should have caught it before we did.
And that's,
or before the customer did.
and that's gonna stifle innovation, right? When people are scared, new products, innovative things can't happen. Now, there's, like you said, there's a realm of, hey, these are the rules. Don't play too far outside of them. But there's a big difference, like you said. For 3 years, we're telling you there's a problem. Here's the way to fix it versus, hey, this is going to be a problem. And then the shoe drops, right? These are two totally different things. So I agree with you. And I think that's something that really needs to change, right? Even, what is it? I was thinking about like Mark Rowan. He was talking about private markets are now going to be the future and public markets are going to bleed into this, right? Like all these things we see coming. And generally these folks are ahead of the curve. How do we get that on board with regulators and the regulatory bodies to make sure we're doing this right? I'll tell you one that always cracked me up. So obviously it was like marijuana, right? So FinCEN put out like their guidance if you're going to handle it, but it's still federally illegal, but in certain states it can be legal, right? There's all this interesting gray area. And I think if we just put some of the smartest minds together, we can come with the right approaches that make sure that it's a safe environment. It's good for the customers. It's good for the businesses. It's good for the government. And it's good for everybody involved. And I think that we have a little bit too much of this like win-lose culture, right? A binary outcome. This has got to be a win. Win for the regulatory side, win for the folks that are innovating, and win for the end customer.
Now let's quickly shine a spotlight on a game changer in the financial world, ClearingWorks. Simplify your financial management with a one-stop solution for all your AR needs and with a single login. Are you intrigued? Visit clearingworks.com to schedule your demo today.
So we've talked about all these different fun things, but I want to understand is what do you think the biggest win, when you look at all the received customers and all those different folks, can you share a story with us of this really big win that you've seen happen with a received customer on one of the things you're like, that was just effing cool that we were able to make that happen?
Yeah, I can tell you there's been a couple of them. And the fun part is when you feel the team's energy and then you feel the customer's energy. And an example was we just saw some behavior that looked a little bit fishy, and our own internal checks and balances were able to pick that up. And we just shot them a note saying, "Hey, is this you? Is this what's going on? Just tell us." And they were like, "Yeah." And that's awesome that you reached out to me and just checked on me. And that was really cool because it was like, we all try to solve for automation and scale, but what we all really want is that personal touch. So that was a really special moment. And then that customer was just thrilled to be with us and still with us to this day and wonderful. And we feel really moved by that. Like when I hear, "Hey, you helped save me some of my concern," or "Hey, you helped me achieve my goal this month and grow our business by X," that makes me really smile. We've had some folks that couldn't get access to the traditional financial system have gotten us, and we watched their businesses double. And that's dope.
Oh, that's
like when I see that, I'm like, this is it. This is the dream. So I'll tell you, there's a lot of sleepless nights, mostly over problems or things going wrong. But when we get stuff right and we can see it have a material impact, and I think material is often viewed as millions and gazillions of dollars, but letting somebody sleep better, letting somebody be able to get time off to go be with their kids or whatever they want to go do and pursue a passion, having their business grow at the speed that they want it to grow, that's a material impact. And we're proud of that.
So you mentioned a handful of things, and I'm going to try and distill it down to one question. You talked about not being able to sleep at night sometimes because you're trying to figure out how to solve a problem. How do you prioritize solving, whether it be a systematic issue, and then also maintaining that customer first mindset? What are the things that you do to be able to balance those as a leader in fintech to make it so you can get back to sleep in the middle of the night?
I got a 7-month-old boy, so I'm not so sure that sleeping is going to be happening anytime soon. But I think that I feel very blessed. My mom is an industrial organizational psychologist, so I always got to be around thinking and leadership. She did some work with different military branches, and it's something that my grandfather was a World War II vet, and my dad was in the military. Being here in Israel, obviously, it's very prevalent in the culture. And some of the things I've tried to absorb is really that empowerment. So when it comes to solving a lot of issues, the buck doesn't really stop with me. I tell the team that they have the power to think outside the box. And if it's on behalf of the business, on behalf of the customer, it's on behalf of the team, they can go execute, right? And we make sure that we keep those 3 core things always close, but also couple that is info. We call it info sharing, but we do like a whiteboarding session every 2 weeks on Tuesday. And we have different team members talk about not just their particular space, but how they think about things. How are they thinking about things in the future? What are some of the problems that keep them up at night? Because my general take is if it's bothering you, it's bothering somebody else. So we try to think ahead. And as you mentioned, how do we balance between the system and the customer? We view them as very much as the same, right? Like part of the way I envision Receive, and I don't know how this all pays out in the future, but we view it as ad libs, right? You should be able to say, I get my paycheck every 2 weeks. I need this amount of spending power. Pull the money on this date, right? We should be able to build a flexible system that can meet our customers where they are. So part of what we always do is we make sure we have our ear to the street. First of all, in terms of what other folks are doing, ear to the street in terms of the customers, but also focused on making things, what do they call it? KISS, right? Keep it simple, stupid. Just let's make it very flexible, very intuitive, not build 10 things, build one thing right, and keep building on top of that. That's how we try to think about it. And a lot of the folks on our team come from various different backgrounds, but what I'm proud of is we're focused on the customer, we're focused on building the business, and we're focused on doing right. So I think when you have those 3 tenets and we keep going forward, that paves the path for success. Now, I won't tell you that we get it right every time, balancing between system and customer, et cetera. I can promise you we are not perfect, but I think when we do make a mistake or anything, I'm the one who always is like first to raise my hand because it's my mistake. It's the team's success, but it's my mistake. So
It's come to that time of the discussion where we bring out the good old crystal ball.
I love it.
I want you to take a deep look into the crystal ball, Ariel, just deep in there. And I want you to look and see how the fintech market evolves over the next 5 years. And what is it that you see in this fun crystal ball?
Wow. I love that. I think that, and I don't want to give the traditional answer of an AI powers these things forward, but
Come on. We've already mentioned it once. We might as well add it in. No, I'm just keep going, man. I'm sorry.
The way I see it is I see everything having a fintech angle. Like I said, when we boil things down, everybody has things to pay for and things to get paid for. And I see that discrepancy between those times getting compressed. I see ubiquity in payments, different types of payments everywhere you go. And I got to tell you, I love traveling. Obviously, I'm in Tel Aviv now. We travel a ton, right? The different payment methods, pay by this, tap and pay. Those are the things that I think they'll continue to get even faster. I'll tell you a funny story. I'm one of three boys, and my older brother and I were talking, and he's telling me about this fast food chain, and their point of sale is the fastest thing I've ever seen. And I was like, to my brother, he's my older brother, is like 9 years older than me. And I was like, since when do you pay attention to point of sale? And he's, duh, you got me into this. And I was like, that's awesome. So when I look into that crystal ball, cool. I see everybody starting to care about speed, security, and personalization. It's not, I see the incumbents trying to catch up, but I see companies coming out that make payments either instant or they don't need to be instant. The ability to personalize to me is amazing. Like I mentioned, that's the vision behind Receive, right? The ad libs. Mm-hmm. If I get paid every 2 weeks, how do I get my liquidity? How does this work? All those things that you can plug, play, and be on your way. That's my long-term vision. When I look into that crystal ball, I see payments everywhere. I see people getting much smarter about payments and thereby seeing the things that may have been a little bit more expensive, predatory, or problematic getting phased out, right? Rising tide floats all boats. I think people get smarter. People use more of the innovative tech. They use it right. The regulators are going to get on board. Everybody's going to be in harmony saying fintech is the future. Everything has a fintech component. Let's embrace this and let's make fintech the language that we all speak. That's my hope when I look into that crystal ball.
So now the crystal ball has lost some of its fogginess in there. What would you say is going to be the biggest constant thing that continues to happen? And what do you think the biggest change will be between those two things?
I think that after the this might be a little bit on the contrarian side too, after the mess that we've seen with the Fed and rates going down to zero and now back up, I think we're going to start seeing more like public capital, maybe going a little bit more private and working more with some of these private companies, right? Where things can be a little bit more personal, less on pleasing stakeholders, much more, how do we build a business that can challenge the norm and be innovative? So I think that's coming in the near future. As I mentioned, Mark Rowan said it much more elegantly than me. But when I heard it, I was like, hell yeah, let's do that. Now, obviously, as a fintech founder and working with VCs, that's something I believe in core, but he has this incredible ability to convey those messages. I lack that extensive, beautiful vocabulary, but I'm learning and growing. But I see that happening. And I think what that's going to do is take a little bit of this lure of being public. And anybody who's been public knows the 10Ks, 10Qs, those take up a ton of time. And if we could repurpose that time and focus on the customer, focus on streamlining things, maybe offering dynamic products that can roll out. And by the way, we roll out for a week, it didn't work, we scale it back. What didn't this tweak? Let's have skunk works. Let's think forward. Let's do that. One of the things I used to hear at Amex and I love it was like, let's move fast and break shit. And I love that. Like, I was like, yes, like that's what we want to do. And take away the fear, take away, like you said, that slap on the wrist or the public humiliation. Turn this into a genial effort where everyone's focused on democratizing access. If we can do that, I think the future speaks volumes, and that volume and language is fintech.
So you talked all about all the fun change. What do you think is going to stay the same in the next 5 years?
I think we're always going to have the incumbents there, right? I think that those things are going to take a little bit of time, like the bank players, the big folks. But I think what's interesting is I'm hearing people say, wait, why am I leaving this money at Chase? I'm not making any interest. I'm going to go to Varo. I'm going to go to Chime. I'm going to go there. They're offering me and 5% a year. Let's do that. Or even Marcus from Goldman, right? May have not worked out exactly as they would have liked, but there's a lot left to go do. No, there is. And I give them a tremendous amount of credit for saying, let's go do this. That's what the world needs now. So I think there's going to be certain things that won't change, right? Regulation is always going to be a little bit behind. I always laugh when banks, they have to produce the SAR report every 2 years. So by the time that report's already produced, those folks are already off with the bad money. There are some things that won't change, but I think the banks will be there, the processes will be there. But I think as we keep the push, everybody will continue to get more and more competitive. And I think what they'll start to normalize is for good businesses doing the right thing versus just lucrative businesses or just public businesses. That's what I think. We'll see a lot of the same, but we're going to see the new as well. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping, and that's what I believe.
So it's funny, like I'm going to distill this down and tell me if I got it right, because what I'm hearing is that the public accolades for being a public company and all the things that go along with it are losing their shimmer and their shine, and things are coming private. There are a couple companies that are public companies right now that are in the process of going private, that are in fintech space. So I totally get that with that. But the other piece that I thought was interesting is that when you talked about things that are going to stay the same, we're still going to need traditional FIs. We're still going to need the regulatory environment to protect her. We're still going to need all these things to happen in order to support all of these changes that need to happen to support the customers in the marketplace. So that is what I got out of what you just shared.
Yeah, I think that you nailed it. And there's always tension, right, between the incumbents, the new. But I definitely do believe that I can think of a number of big payment companies going private now, whether it's to focus on margin or to come out with new innovative products. I think that there's a lot of appeal there. And by the way, when you're private, you have a little bit more lax, right? There's less of the regulatory impact, et cetera. But I think that I'm optimistic about where things are going to go. I think that sometimes things are up, sometimes things are down. But I believe that the incumbents are starting to think differently. They're starting to see the future. I welcome a lot of the things that I see out of the OCC and obviously different folks like that and FinCEN and how people are starting to think about these things. And I believe with good regulation, good thinking, and good people, we'll be able to really push that forward. Yeah, I think you encapsulated it perfectly.
So one last big question. And that question is, if you give a fintech founder one piece of advice, and it's the only piece of advice they could ever use, and do it in one sentence, what would it be?
Trust your gut.
All right. So now I got to ask, how do you know when your gut is telling you the truth?
I don't know. I don't know that
it's not the fear taking over. It's not an analysis over analysis. How do you know that the gut is leading you in the right way?
I don't know that you ever truly know, but if you know that you're driven to go do something, and like we talked about even at the Amex side, that passion that I saw come through, if you're passionate about this, you can succeed and keep pushing forward. I'm not a success. I'm not in the position to be offering sagely or wise words of wisdom, but I can tell you when I was starting out, Receive, I had these ideas and I got lucky that I had such wonderful support from the Emilio folks, from prior people in my life. So I got really lucky. And what they kept saying was trust your gut. And I kept being like, guys, I can't, I got this and that, but they were right. And even some of the crucial decisions that we made at the early onset, they were right to tell me to trust my gut. I didn't know at the time that they were right, but they were right. And the beauty in that is even if they're right or maybe they're wrong, if they're done out of the right place, they're probably fixable. You can probably pivot quite a bit to make it work in the right direction if it's done from a good place with the right passion. So I don't know that I have a definitive answer or there's some kind of barometer, like if you feel it all day and all night, it's perfect, right? I don't know. That's fair. But I think if you're operating in good conscience, with deep passion and smart folks around you. Like, again, I am blessed to have the most supportive wife, incredible mentors, supportive family. Like that, I'm not taking for granted at all. Like my wife is the best. Like she tolerates me talking about fintech stuff on vacation. It's crazy. And the ability to call like folks that have written books in this space and just pick their brains and kick the ideas around. And it's awesome. And I value that and I cherish it, but it's just follow your gut. I think it will lead you in the right direction as long as you have the right direction, the right belief system, doing the right thing. The rest will all work out. And one of the things I can say after living here, because I'm from New York, right? So I'm not from Tel Aviv, but one of the things moving here, which was really interesting, was when I would tell people, why would I do this? You have a job, etc. That was my way of thinking. Their response was, why not do it? And I didn't really have a good answer for it. I gotta be honest with you. I was like, what if I fail? Why not try? And then you'll know. And I was like, oh man, this is like some like next level sensei mind jujitsu. You guys are good. And I think that with that came, do I believe it? And I'll tell you, like when I came up with Receive, I went with my wife. We went to Crete with my youngest daughter. She was like 9-10 months at the time. I told her I wanted to do it. And she said, I got you. I believe in you. And then I came back and I told the Emilio team and they were super duper supportive. I look around and I got really lucky with the support, but if it comes from your passion and people feel it and they believe it, they'll support you. So trust your gut.
Ariel, thank you so much for joining us today, sharing this incredible journey, your perspectives, everything from DJing to disrupting fintech to like all the contrarian views. Man, it's been really cool to see how all these experiences have shaped your passion for this industry. And I really appreciate you hopping on with me today.
I appreciate you having me. It was a pleasure. Grateful to just even get a chance to chat. It's been a blast, and thank you for having me.
Folks, that's another episode of Fintech Confidential's Leaders One-on-One series. And if you've made it this far, don't forget to subscribe to Fintech Confidential, share the episode, like it, comment, all that fun stuff. Don't forget to sign up at Fintech Confidential to be notified every time an episode gets released, anytime we have a groundbreaking news story, and all of the fun information from all of our partners in Fintech. And until next time, keep moving forward.
As we wrap up today's episode, I've got one last thing for you. If you're in the trenches fighting fraud and financial crime, you know it's a complex battlefield. That's where Hawk's AI tools for real-time payment screening, AML, transaction monitoring, and dynamic customer risk rating come into play. These aren't just buzzwords. They're game changers designed to make your compliance more effective and less of a headache. Imagine slashing through false positives with precision and giving your compliance strategy the edge it needs. Head on over to gethawkai.com to sign up for a demo and discover how their platform can revolutionize how you fight fraud and financial crime.
This has been a production of DD3 Media with all rights reserved. This is provided for informational purposes only. It is not offered or intended to be used as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. We strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, but will not be responsible for any missing facts or inaccurate information. You comply and understand that you should use any of this information at your own risk. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile financial assets, so research and make your own financial decisions.